Hey guys! Today I'm doing my first tutorial. I'm going to show you how to paint these easy clouds. There are 3 different types of clouds that I'm doing here, and you can decide whether you want to do all of those or just one. At first I lay down a layer of water, and you can see on the top right corner that it's kind of glazing, it's shimmering, and that's exactly the right amount of water that you want. You don't want it to be super wet, but you don't want it to be dry as well. And now I'm adding the paint to the water. This is the wet on wet technique. And I want it to be very soft and fluffy. Also, by the way, I'm looking at reference pictures. I'm gonna link those down below if you want to paint those as well. But I'm not completely copying the reference picture. It's just so that I know what a cloud looks like. It's just so that it's easier. And also with the first painting that you see me doing right now, I kind of copied the colors a little bit, and yeah, that's why I chose 3 reference pictures. And now I'm adding a darker tone, and it's like I'm gonna build up a lot of things. So here I'm doing something that I didn't like, and now that's a tip for you. Just use a tissue and remove it again. You can kind of erase watercolor, and I'm smoothing that out again so that you don't see it anymore. You see on the picture that I wanted to add those blue stripes, but they were way too harsh and I didn't like them that way there, so I removed them again. And I want everything to look very soft and fluffy, and that's why I'm using a lot of water in that painting. And also I'd recommend to use a similar brush like I am. I would not recommend to use a water brush for that. I love water brushes, they're super useful, but for that I'd use something like I'm here, and it's a very big brush, so I don't feel tempted to add too many details. And I'm kind of fluffing that out. I'm creating a structure, and it's very loose. Don't get caught in perfectionism, because clouds are very messy, they're loose, and the more messy you can paint, the more realistic it will look. If you want to copy every single stroke you see on the picture, it will never look like that. Okay, you can maybe do that, but I feel like it wouldn't be that much fun, and yeah, it wouldn't be watercolor clouds anymore. You can, of course, attempt to do them in a more realistic way, but I really want them to have a painterly look, and that's why I'm using a big brush and messy strokes. And at first I'm just using watercolor, and you saw in the beginning that there are opaque white bits on the clouds, and for that we are going to use white gouache, white acrylic, opaque white, whatever you have. So to do this technique you will need that, but you can get that probably anywhere, and it will not be expensive. You can get tons of those. So now we're moving on to the next picture, and I'm just adding a background. It's a solid background and a little bit of details to the cloud. You see on the reference picture that the cloud is very light. There aren't as many details, or not in color at least. There is a lot of structure, but it's not a big color difference. And on the third painting, I'm just adding a light gray at first. Again, the paper needs to be wet, and I'm adding a bit of color. It's a grayish blue. You can use any kind of color that you like. I just mix different types of blue, and that's something where I added a little bit of black. I used blue and added black, and therefore it's desaturated. And now I'm adding the the other colors to the first painting. We're adding a bit of yellow and orange. Those colors are a bit desaturated as well because I didn't want them to be as vibrant. And if you don't want your colors to be too vibrant, then just add the opposite color of the color wheel, or you could just use black like I did with the blue, and it will be a bit grayish. Just mix colors together and see what color you like. And also keep in mind that with watercolor, the colors won't dry exactly like you mix them. They will probably, depending on your watercolor, but they will dry lighter. So you see me adding the next layer of background because I wanted it to be a solid color. And now more details to the cloud. I decided that I wanted it to have a little bit more contrast than in the reference picture, but it will be incredibly fluffy in the end. And yeah, I'm adding tons and tons of detail and fluffiness. And don't be too symmetrical. Just make sure that you put down strokes just like you feel. I don't know, it's very intuitive, and it's not like you have to be very strict about that. And painting clouds is just a lot of fun, and don't be too hard on yourself because the looser you paint, the better it gets. And then I'm just adding a bit of water and desaturated colors. And I'm also blending the bottom of that picture together. And we're back again at the shadows of this cloud. And again, it's very, very loose. I'm barely looking at the reference picture because it won't be exactly the same. And here I'm using a very big brush again, and you see that I basically add just dots and shapes, and that's about it. And more color. I'm slowly building up that color because on one hand I want those shades of bluish gray, I want them to be mixed together and to be blended very well. And on the other hand, I want to have texture and I want to have those fluffy details of the cloud. So I'm adding more and more details. And here is the sky of the first painting. I'm using very diluted paint, lots and lots of water, and adding a tiny bit of paint. I want it to be blended very, very well. And now we're adding more color to the third painting. You see that it dries very, very light. You can see that in this painting a lot. I'm blending those together and adding more. You'll see me add even more to this one because it dries so light. But don't go too dark because it's easier to build up the color, to start very light and add again and again, than it is to just use a very, very dark color. And it's hard to go back again. You can do that with watercolor, but I recommend to build up the shade that you want. And here's the fun part. We're getting to the Chinese white, opaque gouache. Whatever you have at home, just make sure it's a white paint that's fairly opaque. You can use whatever you have, and you can get those at any store, I guess. And here I'm adding the clouds that I see in the sky. I haven't done anything for them at that moment because they don't have a lot of shadows. I'm just adding the highlights here. And also the other clouds, the dark ones, get a lot of highlights here. And by the way, I'm using a very dry brush so that I have a lot of texture there. I want it to look loose and fluffy, and also I'm blending those colors, the white and the watercolor, a bit with water. You see that on the top left corner here. and here on the shadows you can see that very well. And then I'm adding a bit of mist, a bit of white dots, just to make it a little bit more cute and magical. It adds a little bit of something. And now to the white gouache on the second painting. I'm doing the highlights here and some mist again, and then I'm gonna add the white gouache to the shadows as well. And that's the most fun part, if you ask me, because you can paint so loosely and just put the paint wherever you feel like it. And if it doesn't look that great, you can always cover that up and blend it together and do whatever you feel like. Just make sure that you have highlights and shadows as well. You can use that technique as well with water and also with snow. I think that it would look great with snow. And adding more and more color, blending it together. And now to the last painting, and the white gouache is being added here, and I'm blending it again. This one is super simple. If you don't feel comfortable in doing the other two, just try out this one because it's so easy. Like you saw it, I just added a bit of color and more, and now I'm adding white gouache and blending that out. And that's just about it. It's super easy. And now we're done with the paintings, and I'm removing the tape. That's so much fun as always. And here you see the finished pieces. Those are super simple, and I would really love if you would try those out. And thank you so much for watching. I wish you a very nice week. And if you liked that video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, goodbye.